One of the reasons why I'm becoming a pilot now is actually because of the countless hours I spent flying on flight simulators. So today I'm going to talk about my flight simulation career. I started my flight simulation career with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2002. I didn't start flying when I was 3, but that was the simulator our local store had in stock. I walked past it for a couple of weeks and annoyed my parents, so finally I got it as a gift. I was around 8 or 9 at the time, and I immediately installed it on our old computer to try flying a flight. And needless to say, it didn't go so well. I of course had no idea what I was doing, and I could only use keyboard and mouse to control the aircraft as well. But I didn't give up and started writing a long list of keyboard commands to try and figure out how to fly a plane. And after a while I actually managed to land for the first time. It wasn't near an airport or anything, and it definitely wasn't soft, but I actually still remember the first time I touched down and the game didn't just tell me I'd crashed. It was a 777 in a valley in the USA somewhere. I actually still remember that quite vividly. But the simulator was quite outdated even at the time, so in summer of 2009 I got an upgrade. For some reason, after some research back in the day, I decided to get Microsoft Flight Simulator FS 2004, even though FSX had been out for a while at that point already. Along with it, I also got my first joystick, a Thrustmaster T Flight Stick X, which I still have today, and it actually still works pretty well. It was a game changer for me because FS 2004 introduced the virtual cockpit, so you could actually click buttons in a 3D space, and I didn't have to rely on my keyboard command list all that much anymore. And having a joystick meant that hand flying actually was fun and was doable, really. I at that point still mainly used the included default aircraft, but I did also start to install some freeware and just play around with it. I didn't fly a lot of point-to-point flights back then. One thing that I did very often actually is I just taxi to the runway and wait for another plane to show up and then take off right after it and just chase it around until I crashed, basically. But I had fun and I was reading and watching more about aviation every day. So, after a couple of years, it was time for an upgrade yet again. FSX, or Flight Simulator 10, is probably the sim I spent most of my hours in. I bought it in April of 2013 and first used it without any payware add-ons, since the new aircraft and missions gave me enough to do for a while. I still remember one mission that ended up on a really funky looking island with a secret air base or something, and I still remember it took me ages to finish this mission, but it was incredibly fun. Later that same year I also bought my first proper study level simulation add-on, the PMDG 737 NGX. Now at that point I had a basic understanding of how to fly a plane, and I could land somewhat successfully with the default planes. But I was absolutely blown away by the details and the complexity this add-on had to offer. So what I did is I actually read the manual and did the tutorial flight. It was to Amsterdam, I think. And the first time it didn't go so well. It actually worked fine. It took me forever to set up the plane, but it worked fine all up until the landing where something went wrong, but I just tried again the next day and it actually worked. And that really started my flight simulation career for real. I just couldn't stop flying this incredible add-on and tried my best to understand how to operate a 737. I've had loads of nice moments flying the plane, and I think that's one of the reasons why I still love the 737 so much. I also bought the Cytec yoke, throttles and rudder pedals around that time, and I actually still use those same pedals today. A year after the NGX, I also bought the Aerosoft Airbus series, which I never really enjoyed as much. I mainly used them to fly shared cockpit online with some people I'd met from being a moderator in a German flight simulation stream, which was nice, but I always felt like the add-on was a bit lacking and not very rewarding. Now, I could list all the add-ons I bought in that time frame, but that would get boring and it's not that relevant anymore either. I did expand my fleet a little bit, first by buying the PMDG Boeing 777, which made long-haul flights an interesting topic for me. And then shortly after, I also bought the majestic Dash 8 Q400 as a really stark contrast. In my most crazy times, I had more than 1,000 flying hours in a year, which wouldn't even be legal for real commercial pilots. Which brings me to my most recent change. I switched to Lockheed Martins Prepar3D, back then it was still version 3, in 2015, and I've since upgraded to version 4, but I've stuck to that platform ever since. I do also have both X-Plane 10 and 11, but I don't use them as much, mainly only to fly aircraft like the MD-80 that lacked a good representation in ESP, so FSX P3D based platforms. I did also upgrade my hardware because my Cytec yoke really started to die on me after years of abuse, so I bought the Honeycomb Aeronautical Alpha yoke when it came out. But which aircraft do I fly most nowadays? Well, my number one is still the Boeing 737. The add-ons from PMDG are just superb, and the systems are really well modeled, and the flight dynamics are incredibly rewarding as well. And even after having flown it for way over 1,000 hours already, I still enjoy flying it a lot. Now, the other PMDG aircraft, the newer ones like the Boeing 777 and the Boeing 747, are also in my hangar, and they are also equally as well made, but considering their nature of being long-haul planes, I just don't get to fly them as often. But still, great aircraft. And back when I still used FSX or P3D version 3, I also loved flying the PMDG MD-11, but unfortunately it's not compatible anymore. Another one of my favorites is the majestic Dash 8 Q400. It's just such a different aircraft to most add-ons, and the systems and overall flight model is very nice and incredibly rewarding to fly. It definitely takes some time getting used to, and the plane has some quirks, but that actually only makes it even more fun to fly. The shared cockpit is a huge bonus as well, since it's the most detailed aircraft that can actually be flown by two people over the internet at the same time. I don't neglect Airbus nowadays completely either, although I've always been more of a Boeing fan. But the Flight Sim Labs A320 has shown me that Airbus can be really fun to fly as well. And the add-on is just better at representing the Airbus philosophy and its special way of doing some things than the Aerosoft version. It's very comfortable to operate, and I find myself flying it more and more. I think it just maybe takes a bit more time to get used to the Airbus philosophy when you've flown loads and loads of hours in Boeing simulators.
20, retard, 10, retard.
I also sometimes fly the TFDI Design's Boeing 717, and it's not as detailed as the ones mentioned before, but it's still fun to fly, especially also in shared cockpit. It also brings back some MD-11 memories, since the real aircraft was actually designed by McDonnell Douglas before the merger with Boeing. And I of course own some more aircraft, but most of them I rarely, if ever, use. But what about the future? Personally, I think I'll still be using flight simulators when I'm an airline pilot, to fly to places that I wouldn't fly to in real life, or to do things that you just can't do in real life. And I also already have the new Microsoft Flight Simulator, and to be honest, it's just groundbreaking. The visuals are stunning and it's really fun to fly. So it will definitely become my main simulator once study level add-ons have been released. But now I'd really like to hear about your story. Are you using any flight simulators? And if so, which ones? And which aircraft are your favorites? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you next time.